Of course, SABC is bringing you rolling coverage of the ANC's national conference, and voting is expected to start in a few moments' time. In fact, I believe that some provinces have already been ushered in to conduct their voting. But let's now get the very latest from SABC News anchor Bongiwe Zwane, who is live for us in Nasrec. Bongiwe, thank you so much for your time. I don't know if you or any of our analysts have had any much sleep, Bongiwe, because we saw those nominations going into the early hours of this morning. Talk to us then about the very latest that is occurring there today.
Well, Onati, good afternoon to you and the viewers. During such weeks, sleep takes the back row. So you kind of expect that there will be very little to no sleep at all as we bring all the action for our viewers here on SABC News. It's been, really an eventful early hours as we saw that nominations process. And one of those who's been watching that closely, I'm sure viewers even saw her on air and probably would have mistaken her for one of the delegates. That's our own Natasha Piri, who is standing by with us here in studio, and we also have Angelo Fick, our political analyst, and they both are with me in studio. Onati, just to give us a sense, firstly, of where things stand right now. Thank you so much to you both for your time. Natasha, I'm starting with you. We understand some of the provinces are being ushered in to vote. Do we know which ones are these?
Definitely, Bongiwe, as you said, voting is underway. The first province is the Free State, followed by the Western Cape, the Northern Cape, the PC, then the NEC. We expect the Electoral Committee to actually update us as to which provinces will then go into the voting booth. But I mean, just hearing what William Abbott, the national spokesperson of the ANC, had to say, he had said that, security would be beefed up at these voting stations just to eliminate, this phenomenon of vote buying as well, which is quite a problem, Bongiwe. We also spoke to Chief Matsela, who's the secretary of the Electoral Committee, and said that from each and every province, you'd find that they want 900 delegates to probably vote per hour so that they can actually get this process underway.
Natasha, before I even, get into another point of how long this is likely to take, let's start with this vote buying. We always hear about it. We always hear about vote buying allegations here and there, but how do they prove it? How do they get to a point of understanding that now we're in an instant where a vote is being bought?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the challenge here. And hence, the Electoral Committee was actually brought in, to eliminate such phenomena. But the problem, like you've raised, Bongi, is that who will actually go forward and say, listen, I was given money to vote for a certain, candidate, or it's very hard because remember, these things happen in cash. You only hear of them, but there is no tangible proof of that vote buying process.
Angelo, this is exactly the problem with the ANC's processes over the years, that if you're still at a point where, fast forward 2022, we're still asking you about these claims of vote buying, which we've been hearing about all these years, and you still aren't able to tell us how your systems actually detect that a vote is being bought.
So one imagines this has to do again with cadre discipline and organizational integrity. So if this is supposedly the end point of bottom-up democracy in the African National Congress, where branches have indicated to their regional and PEC structures what it is that they intend, and the outcomes of the election look very different from when you aggregate what those provinces tell you they were told by branches, then I think you begin to imagine that something has gone wrong. And then there are always leaks because people aren't continent when it comes to keeping their mouths shut when it comes to having money. And these few days before Christmas, if you've got a big cash injection, there are ways in which the people who depend on you are going to want their cash, and soon everybody will know you have this cash in hand. Yeah. If we couldn't keep the whatever millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars were inside that sofa, why would it be possible to keep the money that you're going to pay a delegate secret? Eventually it will come out. And so while they can't prove it, the rumor mill is strong enough and people's conduct and behavior is strong enough for you to imagine that there has to be an explanation for the gap between what branches suggest, what regional and provincial structures inherit from those branches, and what the national election outcome is.
And essentially, it's part of what they were trying to eliminate with this organizational document, renewal report that they were hoping as a discussion document is going to go into the policy conference, speak to the very essence of the cadre that is now within the ANC. But the mere fact, Angelo, that right now they still do not have processes that are so rock solid that somebody is going to have to either pay or go to jail for even giving people money or be expelled from the organization is always going to, that in itself, open the process up for chance takers.
Absolutely. So you can't audit at the ballot box. You've got to audit at the induction into the organization. And so who it is that joins the ANC and why, this is a question all political parties have to ask themselves. And how do you advance inside this organization? Is it because of your commitment to the growth of the organization via legitimate means, or is it because you can buy your way up the ladder of any organization? Now, in South Africa, we like to pretend that we've created and live in a meritocracy. But having worked in at least 4 institutions of the social fabric of society in South Africa, I can tell you that we don't live in a meritocracy. We live in a deeply, deeply corrupt society where getting up the ladder, whether it is to get a university title, and we all know about this thing at the University of Zululand where people died because other people were embroiled in, buying promotions, whether it is at other universities where there are, as Mahmoud Mamdani called it, the braai circle, there are other ways of getting your way up the ladder in the university. And then there are other organizations, in corporations. The reason the South African landscape looks the way it does is to go back to Njabulu Ndebele's remark about corruptibility. We keep replacing the corrupt individuals, and we never ask what makes the corruptibility, not even the corruption, the corruptibility of individuals possible. And in a society where dignity is in such poor supply, we rely on titles, promotions, the status that comes with organizational advance, and we don't necessarily build a society or organizations that are sustainable. And the ANC has fallen victim to this.
And before I come back to you, Natasha, I'd like to latch on to that, Angelo, and then we'll look at these candidates that have been nominated by the branches, as we understand that the delegates are now voting and they've been ushered in. These are the people they are voting for. Is this, as some have described, a spit in the face of renewal? Or is this an organization, when you look at these candidates, that is simply trying to renew itself? How do you view that?
So I think, the spokesperson for the South African Communist Party, Dr. Mashila, pointed this out this morning on SAFM when he said that it's one thing to talk about renewal, but what force, what shape, what process is going to be in place to make that renewal possible? And what is the object, what is the goal you're trying to move towards? If there are constantly multiple goals, renewal will take a third and fourth place, right? Yeah. And so we have here a governing party that continues to, as Susan Boyson pointed out, provide hope and live on hope, and wants to hope that somehow past this process they'll be able to engage in renewal. Renewal is an ongoing process, and it has to become constitutive of the organization's being. And that means including strengthening the structures of the organization constitutionally as well as functionally, and making sure that the audit culture doesn't arrive at conference, that the audit culture is throughout the organization's processes and business between conferences.
And Natasha, an organization that's living in hope, there's another issue I'm sure they're hoping is going to pretty much go away. We saw yesterday Gauteng coming out very strongly and angry about what was happening when Nomvula Mokonyane was being nominated, and there was confusion over whether or not that process closed. Tina Jamat also being nominated. So there was quite a lot going on there. Has that issue gone away? Is Gauteng still as upset?
Well, speaking to some delegates, some are still upset. Others are saying that, listen, it might have been a mistake from the side of the elections committee. But you saw those scenes yesterday, when she was nominated. We saw the spokesperson of the ANC in the province, Gauteng, Lesego Makubela, saying that, listen, she's been nominated, she's been elected unduly, just close these nominations, And then we saw Tina Jomet Peterson. So, I mean, some delegates are not so happy, but I think it was quite interesting to see what actually unfolded afterwards as members of the media. When some delegates went out, delegates literally broke into 2 caucuses. You had one of Zweli Mkhize, you had one of Cyril Ramaphosa, and the numbers, just also indicating this is a tight race between both leaders. We saw the likes of Siboniso Duma on stage alongside with Lebogang Maile, which I spoke to afterwards. And just seemingly afterwards, Lebogang Maile Maile then posted the PEC's proposed, top 7, which is Zweli Mkhize, Paul Mashatile, Stan Mathabata, Phumulo Masualle for SG, Nomvula Mokonyana's first DSG, second DSG, Ronaldo Namalonga, and TG with Bulemab. And you know very well that Gauteng had actually backed ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa. Quite interestingly, before this conversation yesterday we had a conversation with Hassan Ngobeni, who is the spokesperson of the Norman Mashabane branch in Limpopo. That is the biggest branch. And remember, yesterday the PC of Limpopo came out supporting Zweli Mkhize. Subsequently, the branches and the various regional chairpersons, of the branches in Limpopo had said that we are not supporting your preferred candidates. We are still supporting Cyril Ramaphosa. So I mean, listen, this throws a spanner into the works. Honestly, this is so interesting right now.
And it's interesting, Angelo, because in his January 8th statement, the president of the ANC talks about how this is the year of the branches. The ANC focuses all of its attention on the branches. Even the branches had to decide what their PECs then have to come up with as their preferred candidates. But it does look like there's a tug of war between some of the PECs and some of their branch delegates.
Absolutely. And again, if this were about ideological differences, one would understand that there may be a case to be made that this is just legitimate political process. But if there is bottom-up democracy in the party, there's also the top-down vanguardist tendency of leadership telling people what to believe and what to think. And here the tension in the African National Congress, of course, is that people at the upper levels of the hierarchy may have ambitions to go further up the hierarchy and pitch their wagons to people at that higher level that they imagine will be able to bring them in. People in the branch level may have such desires, but they also have branch members who have demands for how the places they live in must be served by the national leadership and the provincial leadership. And so that tension and the distance from where the branches are and the issues that obsess them may make of any declaration, this is the year of the branches, political rhetoric over the substance of which in an election year it is about ambition and advancement.
So is it then political rhetoric, Angelo, when the president tabled his political report, he not only spoke about the tensions and how difficult things have been in the divisions, he took it further to say that some on the ground are saying that it's the leadership that is causing confusion, it's the leadership that is causing all these deep divisions, and he would like for that to stop. So is it still political rhetoric, or do you see it as something that the ANC in this current state can actually find itself moving towards?
So again, the 2 points that come up here is 1, political education, and 2, organizational discipline. If people are putting things out on social media by way of campaigning or by way of muddying the waters, that's ill discipline. If they're doing so in violation of what the rules suggest should be the process, that is, of course, a problem of political education. If you don't understand the organization you're in, then you can produce these texts, they can have consequences, and what they effect is to weaken the organization, because then it becomes about individuals, their desires, and groups of individuals and their desires, and that's short-term gain over long-term suffering of the collective. And in South Africa, we've certainly seen that at the state level, and I would argue that that's partly the consequence of the governing party's internal processes, where people have put their individual or group interests ahead of the organization's long-term survival. And if I were in my 20s and in the ANC, I would wonder whether there is going to be an organization when I'm 40, 20 years from now, and what that organization will look like.
And it's interesting because Vasia Hassan saying that to us yesterday, that she wouldn't like to be a young person that is going to inherit an ANC that is in tatters, and also as they try to get other young people. But Natasha, another point that you've also touched on, but you're not getting answers on it, is why the ANC Women's League still believes that the second DSG, creation, as some have called it, is going to better their chances of getting more representation instead of going for the gauntlet and asking for a woman to lead this organization. How are they describing that for you?
Definitely, Bongi, I didn't get a clear answer, and as you've heard the interview that I had with Marupin Rabahopa earlier on, she had said that the ANC Women's League National Trust Team had fought for 50% female representation in the top 6. But I mean, this is remember in 2017 how women, the ANC Women's League had said that, listen, it's time the ANC women, the ANC actually is actually led by a female. But seemingly you have a structure now that elected a male president. What does that say? You know, not that we're undermining all these other positions, but there's this notion out in the public that women in the ANC always deputize positions. You had the late Jesse Duarte serving as a DSG. Why couldn't Marupeng actually stand for the position of SG? And I asked these questions, and you're
not getting any answers. We're out of time. 10 seconds. Another long night.
I've got my sneakers on today.
I suppose all of us do.
We're ready. Change of clothes as well, so I'm ready today.
Natasha, I suppose that plenary is going to be our home for the next couple of days. Angelo, thank you so much to you both for coming through. And Unathi, as we continue then to monitor what happens here, we'll also try to bring in some of those officials who are leading some of these delegates as they're going to, be voting for their preferred candidates at the same time. We'll try to get some of those who've cracked the nod and see how they're feeling ahead of the results whenever we get to hear from them. Unathi?
We wait in anticipation. Bongiwe, thank you so much. Of course, my colleagues there, Bongiwe Zwane and Natasha Pirin.